boldip.com.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Bold Inventor Show. I'm here with my trusted good buddy, Matt Colseth. Matt, how are you today?
Oh, better than I deserve. How you do, JD?
I'm doing quite well, sir. I've got my glasses on for those on the podcast out there. Got some red eyes, sir. You actually were the first one to identify.
I got some dry eye going on.
Some sort of an issue.
Uh-huh.
Turning 40 next week, man. So some things start to kind of wear down, I think, as you get older. So
100%. I'm right there with you.
Oh, man. So it's kind of a overwear of contact lenses is basically what it comes down to.
Yep.
And you're going to have a follow-up here, but they're going to give you some steroids
Yep.
To kind of bring down the inflammation. But aside from losing a little bit of periphery, I'm kind of getting used to glasses.
Yeah. I wear glasses pretty regularly because I wear contacts most days. But
Yep.
Yeah, I actually just switched to multifocal contacts, so now I can see up close again.
Heck yeah. Good job. You're not like...
Right. Yeah, I'm short, so my arms are only so long. Right?
Well, that's so good. Well, for those that are joining us for the first time or listening in, this is we are both attorneys. We're talking intellectual property, specifically patents and trademarks. We hope to answer any live questions as they come up. Know that we're not going to give any legal advice out. Of course, this is not confidential. We're live across YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And we'll be chatting with our guest who's been waiting backstage, Dr. Noar. He's got a lot to share, a really cool story about his product and his company. And I'll be curious to chat with him in a bit. We'll go through our backlog of questions that came in over the week.
Great.
And do our regular thing with the bold bite at the end. I got a fun one. I'm going to blast from the past, episode 5. Somehow we missed it. So it'll be good. Yeah, going way back. No gray hair in Mark Cuban.
Okay.
The sharks get feisty. This is a good one. So let me share our quick disclaimer, and then we'll get underway, Matt. Anything to share on anything going on?
No, not too much. Just a little under the weather today. It's been a weird few weeks, man. I feel like everyone's been sick with something, and I've been really run down, tired, even though I'm sleeping a lot.
Yeah.
Just something going around right now.
Okay. So, well, hope you get better, man. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of that change in weather. We're getting ready for spring. It's kind of almost there, kind of not there, kind of a thing.
I know. Yeah, Maggie and I, my wife and I, took the dog for like a good 2-hour walk today. So that's
great.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, fresh air will help.
Yeah.
There's a legal notice. We're not giving any legal advice. Just legal information sharing, conversations, hypotheticals. We're going to go over a lot of different things. So don't be afraid. There's no question. Too simple, too easy. We love it. So come in, share with what you got, so long as it's not confidential. If you do have something you want to talk with us about, potentially hire our law firm, you want to schedule a free discovery call. I'll put that link here because sometimes I'll forget to put it. This is our weekly live link, and I always offer this. If you actually follow this link, folks, this is the weekly live. I'll give you a copy of my book, hard copy. I'll give you a hand signed on it, John Hancock. Mail it out to you, and save it. It'll be worth billions someday. Who knows? And have Matt put a little signature on there too. So, without further ado, let's jump in. Quora and Reddit have been the hotbed. I can no longer even log into avo.com anymore. Matt, it's sort of this. They've merged with Martindale and
kind of broken.
Yeah, something broke. Okay, let's do this one. I liked this question as I looked at it just before we went live. So what can be done if a patent is rejected due to prior art, but the same invention was already patented in another country using different terminology? Interesting. This is fascinating, this concept of examiners aren't perfect, and they don't always have all the information. And so this set me down kind of a wild goose chase is if you're watching a competitor really close and you've got some intelligent IP attorney working with you, you can actually watch their publications, their applications that are pending. As they get published, you can help the examiner and help them find prior art. And so you can submit third party, what's called, that's the other thing it's called here. Yeah, it's called a pre-issuance submittal. And it's just providing information to the examiner, showing them, hey, there's already been done before. There's already been patented in another country. And so supplying information to the examiner while they're examining.
Sounds like a letter of protest on the trademark side.
Okay, that's what it's called over there, a protest. Okay, interesting. Yeah, it's sort of, and that's before that opposition period, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's before the
Yeah.
examination. So if we see someone who's filed something similar to our client and we're worried that it's going to get through the USPTO process for whatever reason, you might opt to file a petition.
Yeah. Well, and it's important to kind of do these, especially on the patents. I'm not sure if it's as bad on the trademark side, but after grant, crazy expensive. There's two ways. If you slip up and wait for their patent to get granted, you now only have 9 months.
Okay.
And to do a post-grant review. Oh my gosh, whoops. You didn't see this piece of prior art. Well, it's $25,000. That's the USPTO fee for a post-grant review. Yes. So it's a giant slip up. Usually only large companies can really afford to kind of do this type of thing.
That's wild, JD. 25 grand?
25 grand. Yeah. So don't miss it if you've got the ability to watch.
For a re-examination?
Yeah, for inter parties review, an IPR is $23,750 for up to 20 claims. A PGR, which is a little different requirements, 25 grand.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay.
It's wild. Yep.
Was it always that expensive, or is that pretty recent?
I just pulled it up because I was answering I don't know if it's always been that pricey, but I imagine it's kind of maybe to combat, how many cases that tribunal is looking at. But I was blown away. So anyway, long answer to a short question of, make sure that examiner gets it well before it issues. All right. Matt, on the trademark side, what can you do after registration?
So we can cancel. So we can still file a cancellation proceeding with the Trademark Trial and Appeal Board. And really, for all intents and purposes, opposition occurs during the application process. Cancellation occurs after registration. They're the same thing. In my experience, they're basically identical in terms of the timing, when things are filed, the expense of it, that sort of thing, the case law. It's really interesting. That's that expensive. That's wild. Because on the USPTO side, on the trademark side rather, it's still I think only $400 to do a re-examination.
Seems reasonable. Yeah, I guess on the current they're willing to admit that they're human. I mean, that's fascinating. And I'm able to do a little bit of homework and come back and do another session on that, kind of deep dive into those post-grant reviews.
I honestly, this is something that's kind of on the newer side, on the trademark side as well. And I have not had an opportunity to look at a couple of the new procedures that the USPTO has implemented in the last year. So that's something we can definitely take a look at. I would like to do that as well, because maybe in some cases it makes more sense to do a re-examination as opposed to a cancellation, but I'm not sure where that makes sense.
Yeah. Cool. That's an awesome topic. Here we go. Let's head over to the trademark side. This is out of our Reddit bucket. We're doing t-shirts again. Let's see if I can find something non-t-shirt related. You know what? It's an area of business. There's no avoiding it. Here we go. Let's see it. Can I sell a t-shirt with the city name that cites NFL team animals below it? The animal is AI generated and literally just the animal. It's not supposed to resemble the mascot or anything. It's simply just the animal. And then the establishment year of that team. So, for example, a t-shirt that says Chicago with an AI-generated bear, established 1920. No logos, no team name. Same colors. May resemble NFL team colors.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So I think this is definitely both a trademark and a copyright issue. Okay. So I'll start with the copyright. So if you're kind of, essentially ripping off the look and feel of an NFL team's logo, you're basically adjusting their logo in such a way that you're probably violating their copyright, because they have the ability to change their logo in the future too, within reason, right? If you're kind of interfering with that, or you're making your own logo based on theirs, that could potentially be a copyright violation. But I think more easy for the NFL teams to pursue would be trademark infringement, right? You're using their colors, which are definitely registered at the USPTO. You're citing their city that they're in, or the state that they're in, and you're referencing like the animal or the mascot associated to it. Even though it's not the same, you're definitely playing right around the edges there of what's possible. In the other times that with other clients, I've said, hey, like if like we've had clients do like esports betting applications and mobile applications, stuff like that. And we've said, hey, like you can use like the first 3 letters of the state or the city, and like you can use their colors, right? But you start putting logos on helmets and stuff like that, we're going to get in trouble. So I think this is probably a little too close for comfort.
Yep.
You can certainly do it, but I don't think you're going to find many attorneys who are going to say that that's okay.
Totally.
I'm not putting my bar license on the line. So
Right. All right, one more for you. This one here is gives an example here. If I trademark Spooty Doo, does it also cover Spooty Doo Consulting? And if I trademark Consulted Spooty Doo, is it also protected? I'm talking about a US-based scenario.
Yeah, good question. I get this one a lot, right? So if you register Spooty Doo, hope I'm saying that right, whatever that is, and you're in like class 35 for like business consulting services, yeah, you're protected for anything kind of related to that in the business consulting field, right? So business services, probably hiring, recruiting, consulting services. And you don't necessarily need to add words like consulting or consulted because at the end of the day, those words are descriptive of the services you're providing. And what you're really registering is the word Spooty Doo. So like, for example, if you were to try to register Spooty Doo Consulting at the USPTO, let's assume that the USPTO said yes.
Right.
They're going to cross off the word consulting because it's descriptive of the services you're providing. And you can't have the exclusive right to use the word consulting in the consulting field. So that word gets scratched off. So you can't force that word. So what I always tell clients is like, do you want to be on your website or with your clients? Do you want to be known as like Spooty Doo, or do you want to be Spooty Doo Consulting? Right? Because you can be either one. Just pick one and be consistent with it.
Consistency. Okay, got it.
For a lot of clients, like who are using like a coined term like Spooty Doo, which I have no idea what the hell that is. So it makes sense to put the word consulting behind it so that your clients have an idea of what it is that you do. Right?
Love it. Yeah,
So,
no, it's awesome. Awesome answer. All right, let's do one
yes,
more on the side.
you are protected for all different iterations of consulting. It doesn't go in order, right? You get a pretty big swath of protection. So Spooty Doo Consulting, that's plenty of protection.
Perfect. All right, here we go. Who can help us sell or license an aircraft-related patent? My father's patent expires in 5 years, and major companies aren't interested or are using the idea without credit. So maybe they're infringing. If you have experience or connections, please reach out. So they did commercializing patents. It's a game that Bold is just entering into. We've got a couple different experts doing that. I'm stepping in as well. There's two main facets, I should say, of post-grant patent side. There's proactive, where you go try to sell and pitch to sell your invention or license it and get someone else to take a risk on it. Or there's also enforcement, and that's identifying infringers. And I think that's what the second part of this question is asking. Maybe they're using it without credit, or there's some infringement happening. And to look a little further there, that may be the way to go, especially if it's kind of toward the end of its life. There may already be some damages there if it's truly being infringed. You've got to get with an attorney to analyze the claims. You can't just go with your gut or with your emotions. A lot of even inventors, will get a bit confused with what exactly they own. With the patent rights, it isn't the pictures, not the written description. It's the numbered set of claims. And those claims are word by word important in terms of their scope. And so having that look at if there is potential infringement, doing what's called a claim chart, and then presenting that if it does show infringement on each element, take it to a patent litigator, and they can maybe move forward and work with them, maybe find a way to settle. And you can have a win-win where you get a royalty or maybe a lump sum to avoid having to have a drag out trial and pay the attorneys all the money. You can find a way to monetize your father's invention. To me, that's kind of my hunch based on the limited information I have here, but please do reach out. We'd be happy to help you. We would help get this moved forward. And I know that's different than trademarks, right? Trademarks is kind of the whole company, right? I mean, have you seen aspects of trademarks get licensed apart from all out sale, or is it?
Yeah, you can certainly license aspects of the trademark, and that's one of the main reasons why at our firm we choose specifically to file trademarks separately as opposed to multiple class applications.
Right.
There's some good reasons to do that, but licensing is one of those reasons.
Yeah.
You can very easily just peel off one of the registrations, one class, and make that your license.
Oh, that's cool. Actually, I hadn't thought of that. So you've got 5 different classes: apparel,
Yep.
consulting,
We have a lot of clients who have,
design. Yeah.
like working with a coffee franchise or yesterday, and they're going to be in 6 different classes, which is pretty standard for that field. It's a lot for a franchise, but yeah, I think at the end of the day, that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, we've waited long enough. Let's get our guest here. Dr. Mark Noar has been waiting backstage. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's exciting.
Yeah, happy to have you. And for all those out there watching, if you're out there live, feel free to ask any questions you've got of myself or Mark as we go through this broadcast. We'll do our best to get to those. But Mark, why don't you let us in? What is EndoSure? And love to hear kind of the background, how you got that started.
Well, so EndoSure is a company that sells an invention of mine, which is known as the EndoSure test. And it's a way of sensing the electrical energy coming off of your body as a result of contraction of muscle under the skin surface. And it allows us to pinpoint specific diseases. So for instance, EndoSure specifically, why endo? Endo is short for endometriosis. And sure, of course, is to be certain that you have the correct diagnosis. And, we're talking about a test that is completely disruptive, right? And the disruption point is no one was able to diagnose it accurately before. Now you get an immediate diagnosis instead of waiting 8.5 years. And you get that in 30 minutes. And it's completely non-invasive. And that's the beauty of the test. It's unique. And it's really making a difference for the women who suffer from this disease. Now, how did we get there is an interesting story. I have a number of inventions. One of them was known as the electrogastrogram, which does the same thing, but it looks at stomach motility, stomach actions, stomach contractions. And then we can subdivide disease. The problem with disease is it's not just one disease. Each disease has a series of subsets that are slightly different based upon your genetics and other associated conditions. And so the beauty of subtyping disease is you can say, all right, you've got subtype A, and that one responds to this treatment 100% of the time, as opposed to being lumped in as there's no cure for this disease. And so we had already done this for the stomach, and a colleague of mine came to me and said he discovered a higher frequency set of frequencies that appeared to be specific for endometriosis. Now, endometriosis, right? This is when the lining of the uterus ends up in other places like your brain or your abdomen or your pelvis or joint space, and it causes severe pain. People miss basically a quarter of their lives because it's menstrual associated. And it's very, very hard to diagnose. And the current standard diagnosis was surgery. Now, astoundingly, the surgery is only 50 to 75% accurate. So people are walking around, right? So there's your
surgery.
Your gold standard is 50 to 75% accurate. And we come along as a little upstart that we are and said, all right, well, we've tested this on a few women, and now we've tested it on over 5,000 women, and we know that this frequency pattern is a fingerprint that's specific for the disease and no other disease. And so we are sitting around about 99+%. I'd say 100% accurate, but nobody likes 100%.
Right.
You can't say that. So, okay, 99+%.
That's too accurate.
Yeah, it's too accurate. I mean, there's always going to be some outlier. We haven't found one yet, but when we do, I have a bounty out for false negatives and false positives because we want to find out how they got into that category. But it's really very simple, right? 30 minutes. You drink a glass of water. It activates your intestine. Your guts start moving. It broadcasts this signal, which is like spasm at these specific frequencies. And then we sense it. And 30 minutes later, you have a diagnosis instead of the average of 8.6 years from the time of your symptoms until the time someone sees you're so bad that they can find it surgically.
So you've saved us 8 years, 5 months, 1 day, and 23 hours. So, I mean, that's incredible. I want to show briefly the website you've got. Now, it's kind of a blurred out image. So I'd love for you to kind of describe the product. Couldn't see the actual thing that gets strapped, but tell us about this.
So the product, you can see on the abdomen of the young woman 3 dots.
Okay.
Below her shirt. Those are the pads. They're like standard electrode pads. Everyone's had an EKG. Okay. So these are just not wet. These are dry pads. And the device itself is that handheld device that you see off in the side there. It's called a tricorder 3L. So, when I invented this, since we were sensing energy coming off the body and making a diagnosis, I thought, well, this is very Star Trek-y. Let's call it a tricorder 3L. We'd call it a tricorder, except that, Matt, that the tricorder is a trademark of CBS because of the Star Trek series. So by adding the 3L to it, we get around that problem.
I assume JD is also a Star Trek guy.
No.
What?
No, I'm sorry. You guys are. It's all good.
Are you a Star Wars guy?
Not a Star Wars guy. I've seen the movie. I like movies. Yeah, see, I know.
Mark, forget about this guy.
It's okay. But so you're hovering over the body and sensing disease. And eventually, this will turn into the patents that we have, because it's a patent show. We should talk a little bit about patents. As, I've got 10, 12 apparatus and method patents that are associated with this that basically say, if you're anywhere in the body and sensing energy that turns it into a diagnosis and a recommended therapy, that's my domain. And so it's a pretty big domain. And one day we hope that you're going to sleep in a bed that will sense the energy, tell you what's wrong, what's right, put the energy back in to fix it. And then maybe you don't need doctors or medicine or surgery anymore. That's where we'll eventually go.
Time out here. So this sounds a little woo-woo. Okay, what do you mean sensing energy? Help me understand what that actually means.
Well, your body gives off energy from what happens inside your body. So for your knee, let's take your knee as an example. Your knee contracts when you bend and unbend your knee, 7.4 cycles per minute worth of energy. It gives that energy off because your muscle's moving, it's expending energy, and that energy is then reflected outside your body. And in fact, those
heat. I mean, we're talking heat.
No, energy? Literally, it's energy. It's like hertz. Only that's like 0.04 hertz, right? So we're talking about very, very low spectrums of energy. And the thing about that energy is your body needs to see that normal energy to initiate normal reparative processes, right? So we'll go back to the knee. If your knee can't contract normally, then you can't generate 7.4 cycles per minute of energy, and your body will not repair the normal damage done every day, and your knee will just get worse and worse and worse and worse. And interestingly, there actually is a device that was put out in the market since 1985, where if you wear a pad on your knee and it puts that energy back in while you're sleeping, it will regrow your cartilage, reverse your osteoarthritis, and you won't have to have your knee replaced. So we already have a number of things like this in the market that work this way.
Okay. And your device doesn't necessarily do that type of thing to the stomach of women. It just detects.
We're detecting. And all of this, it's far more complex than this. See, the endometriosis tissue that's abnormal secretes these things called neurotransmitters. And those neurotransmitters get in the way of the normal contraction of the bowel, and they make it contract much, much faster. So normal would be 10 to 15 contractions per minute. Then think like when you have dysentery, really, right? You're having bad diarrhea, severe pain. Your contractions are now 40, 50, 60, 80, right? And so that's what endometriosis does, is it stimulates almost like a pseudo dysentery pattern that's unique for the disease. And what's even cooler than that is that it's genetic. So for instance, if your daughter had endometriosis, she would have a very specific pattern frequency. Maybe she's a 20, 40, 60, and your wife would have the same pattern if she had endometriosis. But your neighbor who may have endometriosis might be a 15, 60, 20 in terms of the patterns. And so it's just so cool because it's your body. Literally, there's so many varieties of this disease. I'll give you a number. Because of the secretion of these substances and how they affect your body and generate this type of energy, there's 10 to the power of 50 types of endometriosis. That's like 40 zeros.
Yeah, that's basically infinity.
It's
just
like
shy of infinity.
Which is why this disease is so difficult to diagnose and to find a cure for it, because there's too many varieties of this disease. Now, what we're doing is we're for the first time diagnosing the disease quickly. And then the really cool thing is this reaction takes place over time, and then it decreases over time. So it gets better, it gets worse. We sense that. And so when it's abnormal, we tell you it's abnormal. And let's say you have surgery and they cut it all out. It goes back to normal again. Let's say you take a medicine that works, that actually destroys the tissue. It'll go back down to the normal range until you stop taking the medicine. And then we measure it coming back up because now you're symptomatic again. So not only do we diagnose it, but we can tell you the effect of your therapy. And that's for the very first time also. There is nothing else like that out there.
That's wonderful. So post-surgery, you can sort of see whether they're back and being symptomatic, sort of a post-op.
Exactly. Now let me take you back in history. And so ask the question, when was this first noticed? Because I always tell people in medicine, if you want to know the future, look way back into the past because they already figured it out 200 years ago.
Be careful not to invalidate your patents here, Dr. Noar.
What's that?
Be careful not to invalidate your patents here.
No. There were no patents back then.
Has it been more than 9 months since your patents have issued? Right?
I'm good for the next 25 years. I'm good.
Perfect. All right.
So you have to go back to, right? We're 102 years away from the discovery of these waveforms from the Mayo Clinic, from this one particular physician who published this in 1922. And it took us all the way until 102 years later to say, hey, we can diagnose endometriosis and tell you if you're getting better or worse. So you don't necessarily have to have surgery or anything severe done because you can track your disease holistically.
Now, I spoke with you before, and I know this answer is kind of loaded, the question is loaded. But you can't just easily say, we can diagnose endometriosis. Tell us a bit about the FDA regulations and the testing you had to do to be able to make such claims.
So the testing that you have to do is you have to actually show that your device works for what it does. So we took the data from the original study where they were putting a tube down the woman's nose for 24 hours and measuring contractions from the inside of the bowel. And that's how the original discovery was made, that these abnormal frequencies were just endometriosis. And then we take the same patients, we put the electrodes on the outside, and we match the same signal. So we know that what's inside, we're matching from the outside.
It's just like a 3-prong lead.
Yeah, it's just 3 leads, just 3 electrode leads. And so now that you do that, you have to say, all right, well, how do we know this is the only disease that does that? I mean, the original study was only 50 patients. So we spent 10 years studying over 4,500 women and men because nobody ever knew these frequencies existed in the bowel. And every other kind of disease you could think of to say, is there anybody else out there that does the same thing? Because if you're going to market it as diagnostic of endometriosis, you better make sure, it doesn't also mean the same thing as a hangnail. Right. And in fact, you have to be careful because gallbladder disease is in the 12 to 18 cycle per minute frequency, which overlaps with the 15 to 20 that's part of what we sense. So what do in those cases? You just don't use those frequencies. So you focus your frequencies you focus your diagnostics on the higher frequencies. So this way you don't end up with a concomitant or a confusing disease. And then to be doubly sure, you sense it and then you go find it. So then the surgeons get to go and find it and say, okay, yes, you were right, or no, you were wrong.
Wow. Now, on that topic of, you're on purposely kind of cut out that gallbladder frequency. This device likely could be helpful for lots of different diseases, right? Not just this one.
Well, we talked about the knee, right? Yeah. We talked about endometriosis, and yes, other diseases. Everything that's an organ that has smooth muscle, your bladder, your uterus, your ureters that carry the urine from the kidney to the bladder, everything has its own specific contractile feature, and we can measure that. And then we can measure when it becomes abnormal. And that's how we get to the concept of sleeping in a bed that senses all your tissues. Are they moving at the right frequencies?
Wow,
if they're awesome. Not, do what the knee device does. Throw the energy back in to tell the body, repair this. It needs to be fixed.
That's pretty cool. So there's a future where we're all wearing tinfoil bedtime suits, tinfoil
it may not tinfoil. Maybe it'll be a ring. Maybe it'll be...
And look, let's get a little silly, maybe even a little bold. How long could that prolong life? Is that a life prolonging type of thing, or just a quality of life thing?
if we can determine the individual healthy frequencies, the frequencies of health for every physiological process in the body, and sense when it's abnormal and send it back to normal again, you could technically live forever, because it's those frequencies that cause the reparative process. Look what it did to the knee, right? And
You're right. I'm gonna go grab my wallet.
now, remember the olden days, what did they tell you if you injured your knee, right? It was ice, immobilization,
Elevate.
rest.
Yeah.
Right? Today, they don't do that. They don't do that because of that knee device that showed that you needed those frequencies to make the knee repair. Now you're back on the field in 24 hours. So they give you pain medication and they make you work your knee out even harder, and then it repairs itself.
Well, Mark, here, the truth is I hurt my knee last year. They're still not telling people. I had to have surgery. Whatever the devices you're talking about, I don't believe they're mainstream.
What kind of injury do you have in your knee? Maybe it's a.
It was an infection. We don't know what caused it, but it was an infection in the bursa.
But that's different, right? So infections, you're not going to fix with electrical energy.
Okay.
Right. That's an outside pathogen that's inside your body where it doesn't belong. But if we go back to the knee device, they did I got turned on to this study. So here I am. I'm in Baltimore. I'm practicing medicine, and I get called to survey a study. And this is at Johns Hopkins, and they took 100 patients who would normally all be going for knee surgery because they had degenerated cartilage and osteoarthritis, inflammation of the joint. And they put these patches on everybody, except they only turned them on half.
Okay.
And the other half didn't, and nobody knew who did and did not have it. At the end of a year, the ones who had the patches turned on at the right frequencies for 8 to 9 hours at night, their arthritis went away. They regrew their cartilage, and they didn't need the surgery. And the ones who did not have it turned on all went to surgery because they never got better. Wow. So now, why is that now not mainstream?
Well, I mean, clearly to be the conspiracy guy, right? It's big pharma.
Well, it would be big device and in collusion with physicians, with big medical, because guess what? They get paid a hell of a lot more money replacing knees than they do making sure they don't break.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a lot of that out there, but you do what you can in the area that you can, and so you try and invent as much as you can to make life better for people.
Goodness, and so that's wonderful. That kind of leads me to the next question. I mean, in the patent world, the initial value quality exchange is, hey, you give us your idea, we're going to give you this potential monetary benefit to exclude others. Is your effort here monetary, or is it kind of philanthropic, or both?
I did this. I'll tell you Wendy's story. I'm 12 years old, right? Let's see, 12 years old. That was 1965. 1965. I'm 12 years old. I noticed, right, the girls by the swimming pool, they're not swimming every so often. And so you learn quickly, okay, that's called menstruation. And so I went to a friend of mine. Her name was Wendy. And she's sitting by the swimming pool, and she's not moving. She's like arm against the wall, like not moving. And I went and I sat down next to her. Now you're 12. Now you're 12. You don't know a lot, and your emotions are all mixed up anyway. And so I sit down next to her. She turns to me. She's got tears in her eyes. She's sobbing, and she collapses into my arms, crying and in pain. And I said, Wendy, what's wrong? And she said, and they didn't even know what the disease was. Right? This is 1965. They didn't even know what to call it. She said, there's something wrong every time I have my periods. I have severe pain. It knocks me out for 3 or 4 days. The doctors don't know what it is. They don't know how to fix it. And they said, eventually, maybe as I get older and have some kids, maybe I'll get better. And I looked at her and I thought, what do you say to someone who just told you that their life is screwed up until they get much older? And you're 12. She's 12. And I said, Wendy, I'm going to be a doctor one day. I already knew that. I said, I'm going to find something to fix this for you.
Yeah, you fix this or invent a time machine.
I'm going to figure something out for you, and I promise you. And so I end up figuring something out, and the opportunity came to me. Now, poor Wendy, this is this past September, We have all
have you
this
called
great
Wendy lately?
data. We have all this great data. People around the world are using the device. They're confirming our results, right? And I'm thinking, okay, it's time to call Wendy because she needs to know this. Poor Wendy. Wendy passed away in the summer, unbeknownst to me. But
Oh.
there's your inspiration. And if you want other inspiration, how about the first time we demonstrated this in Europe, we go to Denmark, and they bring in a 19-year-old woman who's been suffering since the time she was 12. She's been taken to the emergency room, 911, multiple times every year. They can't find out what's wrong. And so what's the conclusion? Well, you're crazy. So you need to see a psychiatrist. So she's seeing a psychiatrist, and the family is angry. And the family says, God damn it, she's not crazy. She has pain. We've seen it. And they say to the family, ready? You're empowering her. You all need to see a psychiatrist together.
Oh.
Right? So here you are. They bring her in. There are 21 people in the room. They hear about this miraculous new thing we have. There's the family, brothers, sisters, doctors, nurses, administrators, all these people. We do the test, and I turn to her, and I look at her, and I said, Wendy, not Wendy. I don't remember her name, actually. I turned to her, and I said, listen, I want to tell you two things that are true. One, I'm sorry to say you have endometriosis. And two, you are definitely not crazy. Now, you want to talk about emotional. There were 21 people in that room. No one, no one could speak through their tears. Imagine that.
Wow.
Now you know why. Are you doing this altruistically? You're damn right we are. And are we going to make money at it? Yeah, we are. And we deserve to, so that we can develop the new testing, the new cures that go beyond just testing and discovery. But how about fixing the problem?
Sure.
Because now we know the frequencies, we can figure out what works.
Oh my gosh, Mark, that's so powerful. That story. Thank you for sharing that.
Very cool.
Really, really cool. I want to allow anybody that's listening, maybe after the fact, that caught this, if they want to get started on this, they can, I imagine, go to endosure.com. Is that the best place for them to go if they need help?
Absolutely. There's you can read about the test. Our studies are published. They're listed there.
Okay.
But I'm going to tell you, if you want to have this test done,
Yep.
as it stands today in the world, there's only one country in the world you cannot do this test.
United States.
Put on your red hat, because we need to fix things. The only place it's not yet approved is the US FDA.
Wow.
Right? So you want to talk about making America great again? There's a great place to start, right? Not to be political or anything, but for God's sake, you can go to Mexico. You can go to Canada. You can go anywhere in this world and have this test done. You can't get it done here in the USA yet. And it probably won't be till the end of this year.
Yeah. So, Mark, I want to ask you about that, because that's something when we talk to medical device inventors, we hear a lot. You know, the FDA is slow, right? We're going to Europe first. We're going to get EMA certified first, right? Or European Union. Can you talk to us a little bit about your choice to start in the EU with your clinical trials?
We started everywhere. Our clinical trials were done in the US because you don't need the FDA to do a clinical trial.
Okay.
Right? Because you're not marketing it as a device to be used clinically. You are doing a trial to determine, does it work? So you just need an investigational review board who oversees things, which is what you do.
You're looking at just the efficacy of it.
So you're looking at efficacy, you're looking at the accuracy, you're looking at a number of things. And so then you go to the countries and say, hey, can we get this approved? Here's the data that we have. And you go to the UK and they go, yeah, this is fantastic. We need this. And you go to Australia and they go, oh, well, we're putting $514 million into this whole disease and its diagnosis. We're going to put this device in every one of the primary care clinics in the country. You go to Brazil, for God's sake, and they immediately adopt it. And that's one of the hardest countries to get anything approved. You go to the EU, next month, we get EU approval. And there's millions of dollars in back orders waiting for that approval. But in the USA, they don't even think endometriosis is worthy of breakthrough consideration at the FDA.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Why is that, Mark?
Well, because that's just the way they are. I think that's the best. I hate to make the parallel to the trademark office, but It's because it's just
We'll get there.
We'll get there. It's just the way it is. In order to have a breakthrough designation for your device, you have to have a disease that's called a breakthrough disease. Now, what does that mean? Incurable, and it bothers the woman for most of their life. So they said, well, this doesn't apply. I said, really? It's incurable. Most women suffer through it from the time they begin having their periods until the time they die. There are periods where you may feel better when you're pregnant and other things like this. And they said, that's exactly it. You can get pregnant, you can breastfeed, and then you can go into menopause and you will feel better. So therefore, it's not bothering you your whole life. I said, okay, now let's listen to that message. Get knocked up for 35 years, breastfeed the whole time. You'll be menopausal at that point, and then it won't matter that you have the disease. And so the answer was, that's not what we said. I said, I've got it here in writing. This is what you said.
Yeah, that's not going to fly.
Okay. So what do? Okay, you back away because it's the FDA, and you say, fine, we'll come back again, and we'll do something else. Now, do you want to know what a breakthrough disease is?
I do.
You hear the stories, right? Women are out with their girlfriends, and everything's cool, and they're having a drink, and someone tells a joke, and someone wets themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, that is a breakthrough disease, mild, recurring, intermittent urinary incontinence. Not to take that away, it's a terrible thing to have.
Yep.
But as opposed to 10% of your workforce can't work 1/4 of their life because they're writhing in bed every day. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry.
Oh, interesting.
And so that's the problem that we have is we have often an unsympathetic organization that stands in the way of an approval.
Now, do you get special privileges to be called breakthrough versus just a regular disease?
They give you a little bit more attention, and you get to announce that you're breakthrough. So it's good for marketing.
Okay.
But it doesn't really change. You still have to go through the same thing. And so that's what we're doing. We're going through the same thing that everyone has to go through. And eventually it's going to work out. But it's very hard to believe that you show the same data to agencies that are extremely, extremely scrutinizing in their data, and yet in your own country, which has most people, you know what our endometriosis, it costs $28 billion a year in direct costs and $55 billion a year in lost productivity. But that's not good enough to be breakthrough.
Seems like a miss there.
Yeah, it is a miss. It is a miss.
Well, this is awfully heavy. I do want to talk on trademarks. We said we would briefly. Do you want to talk about EndoSure and kind of wrap things up on that side?
We can talk about your opposition too.
I haven't had any opposition to any of the patents, but we have a David and Goliath situation. Do you know it?
I'm looking at it right now.
Right. So we have a David and Goliath situation. We have this. We put out a trademark for EndoSure. Actually, I made a mistake the first time. I put it out as a 44, and it should have been a 10. Right. Yep. So because it's not a service, it's a device.
Not a service, your product.
Right. And it got approved as a 44.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Okay. Well, what are you going to do? So inexperienced. Next time I'll know to call Matt and have Matt do it for me. And so we put it back in as a 10, and all of a sudden someone's opposing us.
I saw that.
On the last possible day. Why? Because we believe that we're the only company that's allowed to use the word sure in the gynecological space. And because we say so. And so that's where we're sitting. And so, and that's where I kind of call the trademark office is kind of like the Wild West, because it's the only place I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you're being opposed against, you have to prove you're not causing harm. The people who think that they're having harm caused to them don't have to show how or the amount or that it's even occurring. They just have to say, we think.
Is that right, Matt? The burden is on
to make the allegation, on information belief, right, is kind of the standard we typically have to meet, right? Probable cause on some level, right? But they have to prove it at some point, right? During the discovery and then the argumentation at the end. But,
yeah. So you're a startup company, you're raising money and you're making traction, and some multi-billion-dollar company comes by and says, no, we want to own that space. You can't have it. Give us your name, give us your website, give us, and you're just looking at them like, okay, I don't have $1 million to to play your game, but I'm going to end up having to try and find it because, I mean, it's mind-boggling to think you can be bullied by a company that really doesn't have a claim.
Yeah. I mean, just, quick back of the napkin analysis here. I would not say that any of these present a likelihood of confusion to your registration, your application.
Done.
Sure.
Decision made right there. Drop the gavel. Matt says no.
Yeah, Matt says.
Well, then, Matt, you and I are gonna have some more conversations because
sure.
we're at a decision point, and I don't want to give in. It's not right. You shouldn't have to give in because someone else has a device. I think they have a device called NovaSure, which is a therapeutic device that has nothing to do with endometriosis. They have another one called MyoSure, which is a therapeutic device. It's surgical and instrument. It's not a diagnostic test. So it's like, wait a minute. Now, who's going to confuse a diagnostic test with a surgical instrument? Because they have
those two factors, sophistication of the customers, right? Here, your customers are going to be
doctors, right?
Last I checked, they're pretty sophisticated, right?
They're quite sophisticated. They understand the difference between a diagnosis and cutting someone open.
Correct. Yeah. So let's talk. We'll talk.
Thanks, Matt. I'm so happy you guys brought that up because I'm like thinking, do I really want to bring this up? Because I think the David and Goliath story is a good one to help us.
Yeah, I'm glad we briefly talked on it. But
you guys should talk in confidence, and I think we should have it back on a show once we're able to talk publicly about our strategy and so forth.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mark, I loved having you on. I want to do a quick segment to our Bold Bite. I want to keep you on because it's a medical device. In case we don't have time to wrap up, can you share your email address? Are you willing to have us broadcast that in case anyone has questions for you?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, I'll share that here now. And it's mark@endosure.com.
Correct.
Perfect. Well, I take it hold of Mark. You're a wonderful guest. And please do stay on and we'll have a chat about this, the Shark Tank show. Please do go on mute on your microphone, Mark, and we'll transition over here. We'll have some fun. Back 10 plus years to a different device that was presented on Shark Tank. Let's see. All right.
Next into the tank is a Silicon Valley veteran with an innovation genius.
Hello, Sharks. My name is Charles Michael Yin, and I'm the founder and CEO of Prothometer. I'm asking for $250,000 for 10% equity stake in my company. So just imagine you're at a dinner party, or maybe even a tailgate. Better yet, we're at a local bar with some friends having some champagne. Would anyone care for a glass?
Yes, please.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I thought you were joking. Thank you, Lori. Here you go.
Thank you.
Damon doesn't like champagne, so I'll take his.
I would totally done it. Thank
It's
you.
Damon's favorite drink.
Thank you, senor. Charles, what should we toast to?
Pitching to the Sharks.
To you, Charles.
Thank you.
Sometimes it ends badly, though.
So you know how it goes. You eat some food, you have some drinks. Before you know it, the night's over and it's time to go home. And the most important question is, are you safe to drive? And who would want to carry one of these bulky old breathalyzers around? So that's why I created Prothometer, the world's first smartphone breathalyzer. It's so small, it can fit in your pocket. Let me show you how it works. Simply retract the audio jack, plug it into the smartphone, activate the app. Within a matter of seconds, you'll be able to know what your breath alcohol level is. And better yet, it can even tell you how long it'll take to sober up. And if need be, you can even hail a cab with a push of a button. So please join me on this mission to help people make smarter and safer decisions, one breath at a time. Thank you.
So is this already on the market? Are you selling it currently?
So we basically launched in March via an Indiegogo campaign. We sold 4,000 units within 30 days, generated $140,000 in revenue.
Indiegogo is a crowdfunding.
It's just like Kickstarter, correct?
What do you sell them for, Charles?
$49.99.
Can we see it?
Yes.
I thought one of the biggest issues around these things when the first handheld units came out was that you get arrested, or worse, you harm somebody because you're drunk, and you relied on the device to make your decision. Isn't that a huge liability to you?
First and foremost, there's no replacement for good judgment. And so the Performer device basically promotes making smarter and safer decisions. We provide an instruction manual with clearly labeled disclaimers throughout the app. And as long as we do our part in the due diligence and we uphold our side, we're in the clear.
Should I come up and try this with you?
Sure, feel free to come up. It's funny as you mentioned that there's an also. You're at a 0.04 right now.
That would be legal.
Yeah, you're legal.
Does it tell you if she has bad breath too?
It's funny as you mentioned that there's also another sensor we're looking into. It's for halitosis.
Oh, seriously?
And seriously, I'm starting to think of this as more of a multi-function breathalyzer. So the next one we're actually trying to focus on is diabetes. It's in clinical trials, and it's obviously less intrusive than blood pricking, right?
Charles, how'd you develop it? Are you a software guy? Are you a hardware design guy?
So I used to code back in the day. I built and sold my last company within 18 months. So essentially, I went straight into developing the Performer as soon as I exited my last company.
500,000 for Mark Cuban for 15%, and 500,000 split amongst the four of us for the other 15%. So $1 million for 30%.
Do it.
Do it.
All the cash that we needed.
They went ahead with it. All 5 sharks bid.
Awesome. That's a blast from the past, by the way. Look at Mark Cuban.
Yeah, that's from 2013. So I want to give a couple quick updates, and I want to hear your analysis. Well, no. I want to hear some analysis first, and then we'll do some updates. I did pull up their patent. Okay, they had a patent application, and this might hint at what happened here. Eventually was abandoned. They never actually got to issuance. It was assigned to a company that we now in 2023 know of as Silicon Valley Bank. And so it's been under in 2023. But they actually, I'll go ahead and share. The FTC laid their foot down really heavy. They had to offer full refunds for inaccurate smartphone breathalyzer.
No.
Brutal. They may not have done any rigorous testing. Notice this is, the Mark Cuban backed digital health startup. All sharks got in on it. They had to. This 2014 company had to refund everything.
Oh.
So unfortunate for them. But I think it's a great idea. Maybe just didn't execute as well on the testing side.
Yeah.
And found that they just didn't see the reason to move forward with the IP if the company was going to fold. So it's too bad it worked out that way, but it was exciting at least to start. But they got ahead of themselves.
Yeah, I was curious on the trademark side because they had a bunch of applications and registrations at one point that went abandoned back in like 2018. So I was curious if they were still in business or what happened.
Right. Yeah, I wonder what kind of claims you're allowed to make, on that type of thing, without,
Yeah, these devices exist, right? They still exist today. So I don't know what's different about the devices that exist today versus this one, right? Or
yeah.
The biggest problem here is liability.
Yeah.
Right. And so what I heard was they didn't follow the most important rule. And that is, what is my liability if I put this device out? Because it doesn't matter how many disclaimers you have, right? You go skiing and they have you wear a little ticket that says you're not going to sue them if you fall down the slopes. And people get sued all the time. No, sure. They would have had to have done extensive testing. I would have counseled them. You need very extensive testing. You need to be able to, in fact, I would even go to the point of having gone to the FDA and had it approved as a device, right? Which gives you more credibility. You've got the data to show for it. And then, of course, you're still going to need your disclaimers on top of it. The thing that struck me, the first thing was, first of all, that he wanted very little money for a lot of his company,
right? Which
was very striking. And then they ended up giving him a lot of money without having thought about the due diligence themselves. I was struck by those 2 points.
He said that it's fine.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm telling you that we're a $500 million company in 5 years. I'd like to borrow $3 million at your risk. What are you going to do? Oh, sure. Here's a check. No.
So I like what you said about that in terms of you would have taken a bit more conservative route and get the FDA certification. Something like this, what kind of timeline and maybe out of pocket costs would this startup be looking at to go class 1 or even a 510K?
Yeah, well, they'd have to go 510K. It's not a de novo. I'm sure that there were already breathalyzers on the market that they could have used as predicates, gone 510K, and then it probably would have taken them 6 months. 510K is $5,600, and then if you were going to pay the law firm to take this through for you or a consultant, the most it would have cost you is $50,000-$60,000. But at the end of the day, you've got 510K, you've got credibility. They forced you to do the studies to get the 510K, so you actually have something to stand on as opposed to the smile on your face.
And here's a question. It's hard to, of course, go back and guess, but would that a process have caught this erroneous result in most cases? Do you think it would have said, you know what, your results aren't reliable or whatever the inconsistency or they're inaccurate?
Well, if they had done the testing properly, right? So you're doing blinded testing. So you've got someone sitting in a lab with 1,000 specimens, throwing it through this device, not knowing which specimens are positive or negative, and then you break the code at the end of 1,000 specimens, and you say, okay, how did we do? And then you know how accurate you are, and then you would set a variance. So, for instance, for our device, we set a variance of less than 3%, which is an industry standard. So they typically would have done that, and 3% really wouldn't have made a difference in terms of diagnostic versus non-diagnostic. But to me, this is a diagnostic device with lives in the lives that hang in the balance. You go the extra step to make sure you win.
Yeah, I agree with that, Mark. I mean, at the end of the day, right, people who are using this device, if they're using it in driving, right, you and I both know those folks. They're going to be right at the edge, right? And you don't want people right at the edge using your device getting in the car, right? Yeah.
Well, that's a great summary, Mark. Thank you for that analysis. It certainly sounds like you're taking the opposite approach, where you're doing all your diligence up front and you're ahead of where the FDA is. Honestly, we're just waiting, begging for them to give this thing the time it needs to get approved in the US. So congrats on making this move and releasing this product. Hopefully you get to see success here by year's end and get it on the market here in the US.
Absolutely. And there's lots of places you can go. I mean, there's a lot of medical tourism to Mexico as well as to Canada. So you can have it done.
I hear it's about 10% more expensive in Canada than Mexico, though.
Yeah, the dollar is pretty good against the Canadian dollar.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again, Mark. Matt, thank you for your time. For us here at Bold Patents, I'm wishing you guys a great day. If you lost us, you can catch us next week at 1:30 Pacific. We're live every week. Take care, everybody. Have a good day. Go big.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Go big. Go bold at boldip.com.